follow the 4Corners Podcast on social media. Like us on Facebook, 4Corners Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Podcast 4Corners. And check us out on Instagram, 4Corners Podcast. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review.
I want to take this time to apologize to the television audience for what they're about to see.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 4 Corners Podcast. I am Shad here with Matt and Brad. Guys, how are you?
Doing good, Shad.
I'm doing good.
All right, glad to hear it. We want to say thank you for everybody out there who's joined us for this episode. We are going to get our shout-outs taken care of right here at the very beginning. The first one is going to go to Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand, collarandelbowbrand.com. Use the promo code 4 Corners Podcast. That is the number 4, capital C in Corners, capital P in Podcast, no spaces. Save 10% off your order. They've got some new shirts out right now that I'm liking the looks of. Probably going to be ordering one real soon. And our next shout out means we go over to Matt.
Yeah, that would be to Orlando Colon. You know, Orlando Colon actually flourished, Chad, when he was released from the WWE. Became a world champion in his home state of Puerto Rico. I'm calling it a state. It's not technically a state, but
I think it's a territory.
It's a territory, yes. But Orlando Colon is a proud American citizen, and he, in my opinion, is a world champion. Even though I don't know how many of those, I don't know how many shows they've been running since the pandemic. Hopefully they'll start building it up again.
You know, I haven't looked at what they're doing since the pandemic.
I don't think they've been running a lot of shows, but now that you know more and more people are getting vaccinated, shows are opening up. So hopefully that.
It feels like around January everyone started really running a regular schedule again.
Or at least trying to, or at least like there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you'd want to. Sorry to cut you off, Chad. I don't know if you'd want to, but like they could probably run. In theory, they could maybe try to run some shows in Florida. Because Florida's open, there might be enough like Puerto Rican. What's the word? Diaspora or something, where it's like. I don't know.
You could co-brand with MLW too.
That would be awesome. I would love that.
So we have one other shout out here at the beginning. We do have a YouTube channel, 4 Corners Podcast. Make sure when you say 4 Corners, it's the number 4, and there's no space between the number and the word corners. And you should be able to find us. You'll see our logo. Brad, what do we have on there?
Right now we're kind of recycling content from the show. You can actually get this show on there in its entirety. And I've been hand-picking some old like reviews we did and putting them on there as shorter like bits on a weekly basis. And so usually Tuesday you'll get a review. Thursday you'll get like the standard episode. We're going to do more with the channel down the road, but we just have to I just have to get through some changes, namely moving, before we can do that. So if you do go over there, though, please hit subscribe. It really helps us out.
Yeah, the thing about the YouTube algorithm is that it thrives off of activity. So if you comment, if you subscribe, if you press like, all of those things drive more engagement. And so that's why everybody asks you to do that. And they say things like, make sure you hammer that thumbs up button and smash that subscribe button for more content. It's just like, if you do that, then it gets more eyes on it. So if you'd be so kind, that would be nice of you to do. But Matt had us a segue. We are going to be talking us tonight a little bit of maybe not current events, but very recent events. I believe the curse struck us again, didn't it, guys?
Was it Wednesday or was it Thursday?
I think it was actually Thursday, but
It was Thursday.
yeah. But we record a show comes out, and then something big happens right after. So it was 1 year to the day after what Matthew of Botchamania referred to as the Great Bloodletting. There were a bunch more releases from WWE.
You know what's sad, though, is they could still legitimately release like another 40 to 60 people, and you wouldn't even notice because they just have them like stuffed away in cabinets and stuff.
It's funny because they released, by my count, 10 people. Some of them a surprise, some of them not a surprise.
Some of them were like overdue by 5 years, if you ask me.
But they released 10 people, and I have heard conflicting statements on people who are complaining about their booking getting released or people getting released for financial reasons, which is just the biggest load of crap I've ever heard, given that WWE just had its 2 most profitable years ever.
Is that really something that they're saying?
That's something I've seen floated around.
That's actually so stupid that it probably is true.
It might be the excuse that some of them were given.
They literally have like $1 billion deal just with Peacock, and that's for like what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Let's say 4. So that's like $250 million. It's like you're not paying all the people that you released. I have like a list here. You're not paying them near that.
No.
I'd be shocked if all.
No,
of them
I think people
like
do need to realize though that is bad reasoning. But even a company making as much money as WWE does need to cull their workforce, because where a lot of companies get into trouble years down the road, and this is actually what Telltale Games ran into, is bloating your staff, and then when your revenue goes down, you don't have a good way of control, like getting it back under control, because you bloated your workforce too much. And by the time you figure out your workforce is part of the problem, you're probably already out of business because you flushed all that money down the toilet. So it's not a good reason, but WWE, like, you should not be surprised that they do layoffs and let people go, because you do have to, even when you're making a lot of money, you have to still go through and make sure you have the proper staff and everything, because you're not going to make money forever. There's going to be bad times even when you're making money hand over fist. So good companies do plan for that.
I don't argue that point, but for God's sakes, let's not act like people are stupid and say, oh, we're doing this for financial reasons. Like, okay, you're doing it because for some of these people you just don't want to keep around, or some of them you're like, we have no idea what to do with them. I
even think it'd be fair to say to them, like, look, we've got like 200 people on staff. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, just go away.
Well, we'll get into some of these particular people in a minute, because for some of them, it's like, I think that they were kind of set up to fail. But
I understand.
Hang on, let me finish this real quick, Brad, and then I'm sorry. I think they got blistered so badly in terms of the creative has nothing for you line that now they won't, even if that's the case, they won't admit to it. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
There is only one person on this list that I find to be completely unjustified in letting go, and that they did not properly give a chance to. All of the others, I think at the end of the day, there's a couple on here that really hurt, but I could see their reasoning for letting some of them go, and I'll get into it. So there's only one I'm going to really say they missed the boat on. Like, some of the other ones, like, I think have varying factors to why it makes sense.
Okay, so which one were you thinking of, Brad?
The one that I think is unforgivable?
Yeah.
Callisto.
Why do you think Callisto was the unforgivable?
I forgot him.
Because, okay, for one, like, they did the U.S. title run. Like, he seemed like he was fairly popular-ish, but guys like him don't grow on trees. He was still fairly youngish. You had a lot you could do with him. Like that, even if he was only a mid-carder, like that staple mid-carder that can do some cool stuff is always a needed thing. And I think honestly, because he could benefit another promotion greatly, like if used properly.
That one, I think it would not surprise me if Vince sat down, looked at a list of people, looked at his roster, and was like, "Oh, I don't have anything for Callisto. Let's not, we can get rid of Callisto." And it's like, okay, you're the boss, even if this is a mistake. But
And I think out of all of these, he had the most upside left in him.
Okay.
Because we'll do Joe next, so I can compare and contrast why I think Callisto is less forgivable than Joe. But I don't know. What do you guys think of the Callisto release?
He doesn't really do anything for me. He's actually one of those people that I forget is on the roster. I guess I can see where you're coming from. I do think he was like a missed opportunity. Like when they signed him, I initially thought that they were going to try and push him as like essentially like a younger, newer version of Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
Not trying to say he's as good as Rey, but it doesn't necessarily matter. You just need to have like that kind of younger lucha type star. And then they did nothing with him, like nothing. I know they've had Lucha House Party like as kind of a thing, but I mean they're completely forgettable.
I'm gonna agree that like Callisto fell out of the back of my head in terms of who was on the roster because they just kept not doing anything with him. If I was watching and I heard the music and here comes Callisto, but oh cool, here comes Callisto. And, he's going to do some cool stuff. And, like, that's my wife's favorite thing to watch is guys doing athletic kind of acrobatic stuff. Like, that's right her wheelhouse.
I feel like he sadly got... They really typecast guys in masks if they're not big. Like, I feel like Callisto gets typecast as, like, a luchador, but like when you really dig into his body of work, yeah, he high flies really well, but he can kind of do a bit of everything well.
You're right that the typecasting happened. Hell, the typecasting happened to Ultimo Dragon of all people.
Well, what happened with Ultimo Dragon is they thought he was going to be super flashy like Rey Mysterio, and he's not, and then they were mad. Because, you could have just watched tape of him. And the funny part is they owned the footage of, like, most of his United States work.
They did. How hard is it to go dig up some Ultimo matches against people like Eddie or Ray or, take your pick.
And Ultimo's that kind of worker... You might have a better idea of this concept, Shad, since you worked, and there might be a word for it, but Ultimo is really not like flashy. He's kind of that like foundation guy that like you build a match around, but it's like he's there to make the other guys shine and make it all cool, but he doesn't necessarily do anything. He's not necessarily going to do anything that blows you away. He's just going to make the other guy look good, bump for him, like foil his offense well, and otherwise like counteract him in an effective manner. But like he's not going to be flashy about it.
Well, I'm gonna argue the not flashy part. His entire offense was not flashy, but he had some very cool things. It's not like doing the turnbuckle headstand was not easy to do. He did turnbuckle headstand and then kind of the inverted drop kick off of it. He had some really good kick combinations that ended up with some air. The Asai moonsault.
No, but I mean, if you're expecting Rey Mysterio, he's
no.
Yeah.
He's a different kind of flashy. Everything he does is not flashy fly. He's not in the vein of like Ray or Hoovy.
No, and he doesn't.
He's a ground guy that does. He's a ground guy that does some visually impressive stuff.
And he doesn't have. I think his problem too in WWE is he just didn't have WWE charisma. Like he's charismatic and like his work gets him over, but like he's not. He just doesn't have that like, he's not gonna do promos and stuff.
He's not the kind of guy that does a big move, stops, poses, and turns to the hard cam for a second.
Yeah, he's just not a good fit for what they want, is all.
Right. He would do a big. The best answer I can have is that Ultimo was just a real solid hand, and it's, you put him out there and he's probably going to have a pretty good match with about anybody. Now, the thing that makes Ultimo so different is, his moveset was very unique to him. But Kalisto would do a lot of really cool looking stuff. Like one of the things that sticks out from two Kalisto spots that stick out for me that were really cool to watch. One was his Salida del Sol, which was oddly almost the same finish that Ultimo Dragon used for his like 2 WWE matches. But his variation on doing a Hurricanrana, where it wasn't a full leg scissors takeover. He'd jump up, he'd go to do a Rana, and then instead of you cutting a front bump on it, you sell it like a DDT. That's brilliant. That looks cool. You can do it to anybody. And young Mark me would watch some lucha matches and be like, everything that they're doing, yeah, it looks good and it's going to a pin, but it doesn't feel like there's impact to it. There's not anything that's like jars you and stops you for a second. Kalisto had that.
And also,
fast.
I think to show where they almost had something with Kalisto is that match on pay-per-view where he lost the U.S. title to Rusev.
Okay.
Like, he was pretty over in that match. He was a great underdog, and they really did a good job where, like, Rusev really had to, like, struggle to beat him, and then they just did nothing with him.
Yeah.
That was the weirdest U.S. title run ever, actually.
I didn't even realize he had the U.S. title. That's how like forgettable it was.
I think he beat Del Rio.
Hmm.
Well, actually, I don't know if he actually beat him or otherwise he might have just offered him some cocaine in exchange for that.
But yeah, I'll agree. That's a surprising release because it seemed like that was a guy they were building on. I mean, they kept taking their foot off the gas, but he was such a good underdog.
Oh, I hated Lucha House Party.
Well,
yeah.
It's just, I hate concepts where, like, the whole idea of, like, you're supposed to cheer them, but they're cheating. Like, completely.
That only worked if you were Eddie. And Eddie didn't just, like, rampantly cheat. Eddie was subverting a lot of well-known tropes in doing it.
Yeah.
He was taking a lot of expected spots and then twisting it. So, okay, yeah, Eddie cheated there, but on the other hand, Eddie had so much charisma and Eddie was so likable in doing those things that you couldn't help but love him for it. So, the Lucha House Party rules thing never really was established, was it?
No, because they just did stuff and you're supposed to cheer them.
Now, the one that shocked me on the release, it was a guy I've been a mark for 20 years, was Samoa Joe.
See, now, this one I feel is slightly more justified from their perspective than Kalisto because he's injury prone. He is getting up there in years, and I think you could justify to yourself, look, the guy's just, I mean, I don't think washed up's the right word, but just saying, this guy's body is giving up on him and we can't get anything out of him. So, like, I love Joe, but I can see their line of reasoning as to why he would be the one to release. And I have a sneaking suspicion he might have just asked to be released.
I can, since you lay it out that way, I can see it too. At the same time, I fully believe he was misused in the WWE, and I'm talking like his entire time there.
Oh, totally.
I mean, I think he won the NXT title like maybe twice.
Twice.
Okay,
he's the only guy to defeat the Demon King gimmick on Balor.
So he was. I thought it was great in NXT, and they brought him up, and you thought like, oh, it's gonna be like they're gonna do big things with him, and no, like they didn't. And I actually was having this conversation with someone last week after the release. They had him have that one pay-per-view match with Brock Lesnar, and it was awesome, and the build up to that was awesome, and the reason, and he got like massively over with that because, and again, I don't know how this is a much bigger problem that we could talk about, but they just do not know how to fucking get a guys over, and then they'll do something like that Joe Lesnar program, and Joe gets over, and they seem like unable to replicate it when it's like, how did you get him over? Oh, you just had him go out there and be like, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to kick your ass. They had him show like fire. They had him like not back down from the heel.
And Lesnar Lesnar did a lot of really subtle like body language stuff in that feud to make him like Lesnar wasn't afraid of him, but there was like a certain hesitancy from Lesnar.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could see he wasn't like, I'm going to blow this guy off. He true to his character, he's like, oh no, I can take this guy. But there was that hesitancy where it's like, okay, I acknowledge this guy as a threat.
I can take him unless maybe I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly so. And he got massively over, and they had a really good match. And then Lesnar won. And then that was the end of it. And then you had Joe basically doing things like feud with Rey Mysterio. And then he got injured. And then it's been a year since they've actually had him wrestle. And I have a friend who said like, well, maybe he can't pass their like concussion protocols. But I don't know if that's true. I would think by now, unless it's look, Daniel Bryan, I feel, was in probably worse shape, and he was able to come back. But this conversation I was having with someone, it's like, you cannot convince me that during that Joe Lesnar match, they shouldn't have had Joe win the title and then hold the title for a little bit. You can't convince me like that would have been a bad idea, because what happened, like they just had Lesnar for long stretches of time during Joe's tenure just hold the belt and do fucking nothing with it, because his deal was like, oh, I only have to wrestle like once a month.
Yeah.
Like you that's really like that you're gonna push Lesnar that way. And I like Lesnar. I'm not dogging the guy. But you were never going to give Joe a world title run, an actual world title, because I don't consider the NXT title like a world title.
It's not.
To me, it's a brand. I think within the context of NXT, if you hold the NXT title, like it does mean something. But I'm never going to compare NXT to the WWE title or WCW or even like. It's almost like the equivalent of like your Ring of Honor champion.
It's not. Yeah. I wouldn't even compare it to Impact or AEW.
I wouldn't compare it to AEW. No.
I wouldn't even compare it to Impact, because you know why? Impact because Rich Swann, within the context of anything, just by the virtue of his feud with Kenny Omega, feels like he's more important than the NXT champion does.
Yeah. But you can't convince me like they shouldn't have put the world title on him, give him a run. It doesn't have to be like he's world title.
Well, remember that
for,
was
8 years.
That happened.
Could have him 6 months, and
that happened right in the middle of like the really awfulness of like the Roman Reigns stuff. So they like had to get past that as quickly as possible, because we had to get Roman another title shot, and
which they still booked him to lose.
And remember, this is like when they were building up. Yeah, they were building up. They buried him and Strowman pretty much so they could do this Reigns coronation that they chickened out of at the last minute, and then Lesnar beat him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you're referring to the fact that Braun lost the Money in the Bank briefcase despite never having actually cashed it in too, just to get people not to walk out on the end of a pay-per-view.
That was after. We got that awesome 4-way SummerSlam match where Braun was throwing office furniture at people. And then they did that pay-per-view main event where Lesnar just like beat him like a bitch, and then he never recovered.
Well, the other time, and the rumblings that I've heard, I don't know how credible they are, but the rumblings I've heard is supposedly they were going to move the title off of AJ Styles AJ Styles to Joe during their feud and chickened out of that too, which was an amazing feud. To be honest, anytime Joe had a feud where he actually had something to do, he killed it. AJ Styles feud. Wendy, how you doing?
Hey, Wendy.
The Brock Lesnar feud. He's like, I'm going to put my arm around your neck, and you're going to feel some pain and pass on. He's like, I choked out. No, my favorite line out of the Joe Lesnar was not that. It was he's in the ring talking, and Lesnar and looking at him. He goes, hey, you look at me when I'm talking to you. Like, it was Joe made Brock pay attention to him and take him seriously. Hell, the thing he did with Jeff Hardy, where they were having the Jeff Hardy appreciation night, and Joe comes out there, he's like, oh yeah, hey, you missed your AA meetings. I was going to pop some champagne back here, but then I was like, oh yeah, you can't do that, can you? Because you're a screw up. And, just like effortlessly cooking this stuff off. It's like anything Joe got his hands on to sink, that had enough to sink his teeth into, he killed it. And then there were periods when he wasn't hurt, and they still didn't have him do anything. No. They did Survivor Series in Huntington Beach one year, and it's Joe's hometown. So what do? He's the first guy eliminated by Drew McIntyre pre-world title build doing a standing front drop kick.
They do that to everyone, though.
It's dumb every time they do it, too.
Because Alvarez... Was that Brian Alvarez that talked about that? Like, how he mentioned to one of the writers that was dumb, and they were just, like, gobsmacked that you didn't job people in their hometowns?
If you're going to job people in their hometowns because you want to get heat, all right, fine. That's a surefire way of getting heat. But you don't do it immediately. If you're going to do that, if I was going to do that and have whatever team win, then what you do is you have the match go and you have the hometown guy be the last one. And you get to the end of the match and the hometown guy is underdogging, but he's pulling it off and he's coming back, and then you jerk the carpet out from under him. And so you build it up, and then when you pull the carpet, it's a bigger fall and there's more heat. You don't just have a front drop kick to the... Look, I like Drew McIntyre pretty well, actually, and his finish is all right, but a Claymore is him running with the full momentum and weight of his body doing that front drop kick to the face. Just a standing front drop kick to the face is not a Claymore. I don't care what anybody tells.
I don't think you should ever job someone in their hometown. Like, if that means you're putting them in there with someone way down the card with them so that they get an easy win, but I don't think you ever job someone in their hometown, especially when you're just a touring thing like WWE is, where you probably hit that town at most 3 times a year. Like, just give the hometown guy a win.
I'm saying if you're going to do that.
I don't think you should. I think that's a faux pas.
No, I'm not going to argue with you, right? Like, I'm saying, you probably shouldn't, because then people want to see the hometown guy win. They're happy for it. Let them be happy, for God's sakes, as opposed to WrestleMania this year where all the belts are held by heels except for one. But all of that being said, while I can see where you guys are coming from with the rationale for releasing Joe, I still think it's wrong. I still think it's dumb. And I still think that they're shooting themselves in the foot continuously.
I mean, it's going to depend on if he can prove he's healthy. I think they'd eat crow, but I mean, we have to see if he can actually.
Yeah, we don't actually. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but I guess we don't really know what his health is like. I assume that after a year after he got injured, that he's healthy enough to come back. They had him in a color commentator role. I don't know. I don't know if he can actually come back. And I do agree with you, Brad, that he's 42 now, so it's like when you hit your 40s. You can be like a Jericho who has basically reinvented himself several times in his 40s and can still at least go to a certain level and still has like a mystique about him, and he's working a style that he can continue even for a few more years and keep it interesting. But it's once you get into your 40s, it's like it's not that many people who can still continue.
And especially if you're Joe and you're lugging around, you could probably stand to lose 50 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I think that's the key to him. Like, if he can slim down a little bit and maybe train a little bit, see if he has anything in him, because it really is a crapshoot. Because, like, you know, we saw Christian's done pretty well, but like, and even Daniel Bryan's done pretty well post injury. But I would argue Edge is kind of proven he shouldn't come back because, like, he's so brittle.
Yeah, I mean, the older you get, the more, I won't say it's tough to say injury prone, but it's not quite injury prone. It's just that, your joints aren't as limber, like your muscles. It's more difficult to make muscle mass because your metabolism starts slowing down. You're more prone to be getting kind of the injuries that Edge had. Like he tore, like, what did he tear, like his pec or his elbow?
I think it was his pec, but I can't swear to it.
Yeah,
he made it his comeback last year. He made it like a couple minutes in the Royal Rumble and a cinematic match, and then he tore a pec that had him out for most of the year, and then he's another Rumble appearance and like part of a match into it again. Like, that's not like a stellar track record. Well, I think Christian showed more in like his match with Kazarian than Edge's showed.
I'm going to move us to some other folks on the list so we can get through this list kind of quickly.
Can I
go ahead, Matt?
Can I just add one more last thought about Joe? Like, of all the people that are released, and we're going to discuss them, but of all that list, there's only one person I absolutely would say, like, AEW should actually sign them, and it would be Joe. Mm-hmm. Because I guess two things. Assuming he can go in the ring, I feel like you can, even if he's like limited, it's going to be like, well, kind of like we're Christian. Like Christian, I don't think anyone's expecting Christian is per se going to be working matches like John Silver or one of these other guys who it's like he's in matches like every week. Like, I don't think anyone's expecting that. But Joe, I think there's a few feuds you could do, and he has a mystique about him, an aura about him. Like, you could actually like make money off of him if he can still go. I know, like, friend of the show, Chris DiPetrillo, he had an idea, and I've seen it kind of bandied about. He's like, put him in Team Taz, and it's like, holy shit, that actually sounds awesome. Like, if you have Joe as like a killer coming into Team Taz with dudes who are like styling themselves as tough guys, but if you do that, I'm like, you got to push them to, they have to be like your main heels now. That would be interesting. Like, I feel like if he can go in the ring, like, absolutely. But even if he can't, I mean, they're hiring people to be color commentators, like Paul White. And I feel Joe, who has been doing it, he's actually probably the best color commentator they had in last year. Mm. So I think he has value. Like, I think that they should definitely make a play to sign him once his non-compete is done, because I do think he adds value. Certainly, if he can go in the ring, he does. Even if he doesn't, like, I think you can still get value out of him as like a color guy.
Yeah. So, other people who were released, and we'll run through these real quick. Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, the former Iconics, got released.
I was surprised they still had jobs, actually.
When I look at the two of them, what I see is that they're in basketball, you call them position players, but they fill a niche of the yappy, annoying heels that you just love to see getting their comeuppance. The favorite thing I remember seeing them do was the women's tag elimination thing. And so they'd been running their mouths beforehand, but then they're in their pod, and every time people kept slinging folks against their pod, and every time it happened, the two of them would just cringe and scream. And I'm like, this is just great healing, because they've been running their mouth, and now they have to step up, and they have to put their money where their mouth is, and they are freaking out over it. And it's just this great, chicken shit heel payoff thing that I enjoyed. But they're two that I feel like were kind of set up to fail, because here they had this tag act that was pretty over, and then they go, well, we're going to split you up. Y'all are going to have one match against each other on Raw, and then we're not going to do much for you. And now you've been like, Billie Kay was just starting to do stuff, and I guess seemed to be doing pretty well at it. But it's like, oh, we're going to split up you all being over, and oh, sorry, now we're going to fire you. Oh gosh, what happened? It's like you cut their legs off and then fired them for not being able to run is what happened.
Yeah, people are the internet, the probably the internet wrestling community is much more which is the stock term? Is it when you're into something, are you bullish? Or is that when you're hesitant? Okay, you're a lot more bullish on Billie Kay than I am, because she has shown a modicum of personality and charisma, which isn't nothing.
I find the internet wrestling community, and I'm sorry if you're listening, it's not aimed at you because you're smart and listen to us, but I find the internet wrestling community is really won over by barely anything, and then thinks people are way better than they really are. Like Mr. Kennedy just doing that microphone thing. Like he got years of leeway from the IWC for just a little tiny bit of a gimmick. And so like when the internet wrestling community like gets kind of up on their soapbox about this stuff, like a lot of times like the person really doesn't have the merit. And I'm not talking about Billie Kay. I don't see a lot in her, but I've noticed the internet wrestling community really does latch on to like the littlest tidbits sometimes and like blows it way out of proportion and acts like someone's way better than they are.
I agree. But I actually agree with both of you, because Chad, I agree with you in the sense that it was classic WWE. Then it's like, okay, you put these guys together, they're pushing the two of them as like a unit, like a tag team, a gimmick. And then they did the classic WWE thing where it's like, okay, now we're going to break, you guys are maybe over, even if you're not, like you got a thing going on. Okay, well, we're going to break you up, and then we're going to put you guys separately, but then we're going to do nothing with you. And oh, you're not getting over? Oh, wait, the one is kind of showing charisma and doing some stuff? Okay, well, whatever. Like, both of you fired. Enough. Goodbye.
Yeah. I think that was like Bruce Pritchard's first thing he did on Raw was like break them up.
Of course. But yeah, I agree. Like they kind of got a Raw deal, even if you don't think they're like that talented, which I agree. They're not that talented. I agree with you, Brad. Like they're kind of, people are kind of overselling their value. But
I think Billie Kay had some value. I think where they both ran into problems is neither of them were particularly good in the ring.
Yes.
And in this era of wrestling, if you suck in the ring, like you automatically have a ceiling even in WWE. And they were not competent enough to pass that ceiling. But I do think Kay had something. If you could just get her a little better in the ring, which honestly, after seeing what AEW did with Ty Conti, like they need to get Dustin or Thunder Rosa to work with her, and she might have something. But I thought Peyton Royce just wasn't. I didn't see much of anything in Peyton Royce.
I don't know about that, only because Billie Kay has apparently been wrestling since like 2007.
She was in Shimmer, wasn't she? Jessie McKay.
She was in Shimmer, yes.
Was she Jessie McKay or was Peyton Royce Jessie McKay?
No, she was
Peyton
Jessie
Royce
McKay.
was Cassie or Cassandra, something or other.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd seen her as Jessie McKay. I've never seen much in her. She's always been kind of a.
Well, she was apparently trained by Madison Eagles, who is another Australian female wrestler who I actually feel is pretty decent.
Madison Eagles is really good, but she's a weird match for a lot of people because I think she's like a legit 6'1" or something.
Yeah, I've actually seen her wrestle.
She's insanely tall. Like she's taller than most of the guys.
She's very tall
but not lanky. She's not lanky though. That's the weird thing about her.
She's got. It's always problematic to talk about like female workers and their builds. Like she's she's got a very athletic build. She's not an unattractive woman either, but I am kind of surprised. Like they never. Well, I guess she wouldn't have really been like the WWE's type.
She's too plain looking. It's the same reason they hired Sarah Del Rey and is a trainer and not an in-ring talent.
Yeah.
But see, like what I was talking about her build though is, like you see it with male wrestlers too. So, sometimes guys and girls hit a certain height where their body's too big for their athletic ability. You see it a lot with like tall basketball players, like just that weird awkward thing. Or sometimes you'll get that weird wrestler on the indie that's like 6'5" or 6'6", and everyone's like all over the moon about him, and then he's got 2 left feet.
Yeah, I've actually seen guys like that on the indie scene.
You mean Rocky Mountain Thunder?
Yes, but she didn't have that. She was very proficient. I would say she was a more Euro style wrestler than you would think.
Yeah, and she's been good in Shimmer.
And she did some Chikara stuff. I've seen her somewhere else too.
Yeah. I don't know. Billie McKay is good in terms of like her. I think she actually has some charisma. I think she has shown a propensity for like comedy in the last year. She's shown it. I would agree with you. Like, I think they're kind of people are kind of overselling them, but I do actually think that there is value in them. The problem is like if they're not going to be used by the WWE, like I think the value, I personally wouldn't. I don't want to see them in AEW. I would worry that AEW would pick them up just because the criticism that was levied at AEW, which was somewhat fair, was that they didn't have a good women's division. But I actually feel like in the last few months they've been slowly building it up. I actually feel like
they have a mediocre division now instead of a bad one.
It's problematic in the sense that in North America, really the best workers are, by and large, they are with the WWE, and that's kind of goes to your point.
Well, no, honestly, I'm gonna go against you there. Impact has a better women's division than WWE does.
I feel like I would disagree because I actually do think there's some good workers if you combine between NXT and the kind of top level talent on the main roster. But you are correct. Like Impact does actually have a lot of good workers,
and they have a lot of similar concepts done better. Like Jessica Havoc and Neva as like their tag champs are a similar concept to Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, except they're far better at it. Oh wait, they're not the tag champs. Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz are their tag champs, who are fucking awesome too. Like if you're talking about personality and just being like hilarious and like assholes, like I love them.
They've actually both improved a lot. Like Kiera Hogan has actually improved a ton, and Tasha Steelz, wasn't she? I think she was with NWA.
She jobbed to Thunder Rosa on, I think, Into the Fire pay-per-view.
Yeah. So she was there, but she's improved a ton. She showed like a lot more personality. She's showing a lot more better like ring work. I do agree with you. Like Impact does have actually a good female division, a women's division. I think AEW is improving. The problem is that they only have like so much time to focus on Dynamite that you're really going to get like maybe one, maybe two women's wrestling matches. Probably only one. You really have to watch like NW. You have to watch like AEW Dark, or Elevation. Yeah.
Yeah.
To see that, and I do think that they have a lot of like young indie talent that I think could become something. I don't know if these people are actually signed to deals or it's just like a paper performance deal, but they seem to be kind of regular. Like I think it's a combination. I think it's people who are associated with QT Marshall, but also people that are part of like
Thunder Rosa's Mission.
Thunder Rosa's Mission Pro. Yes, yeah. A few of those people like that she's associated with. Which that's always it's curious to me because like as far as I know, she still has an NWA contract, but clearly there's a working relationship between NWA to an extent to NWA and AEW. Look, whenever her contract is up, AEW has to sign her. Like she's basically an AEW star now.
You have
she's too talented to actually not.
I think that's one you got to get the dump truck of money out and just
yes, you have. There's a lot of potential there. She's a really good worker. She has a lot of charisma.
Her gimmick is amazing.
Her and I would roll the dump truck full of money up to her, and I would, as soon as she's healthy, I would roll that dump truck full of money up to Serena Deeb's house too.
Yeah, Serena Deeb is another one who's very competent. She has actually surprised me because I would say the early part of her career I wasn't.
No, I didn't like her for a long time.
I didn't think anything of it, but she actually really, really stepped up her game.
I thought when she was healthy and working for AEW, I thought she actually elevated that whole division just by being a part of it.
Yes. She got her. She should be back soon. I think she got her knee scoped, but that's not a surgery going to be on the. It's not an ACL tear. It's like a scope, so that's not a surgery that you're gonna be on the fence.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, be on the shelf for months and months and months. This is
I was gonna say, as far as like Royce and Kay though, like there's women out there you could get though. You could get Allison Kay. You could go get Kimberly when she's done with Impact, like Deonna Purrazzo when she's done with Impact. I just don't see. There's plenty of women out there. You could get her, even like get Nicole Matthews when her ban with the United States is over.
Yeah.
I would say Ivelisse, but we saw how that worked out.
The thing I was going to say, I'm sorry, Matt, I want you, for the two of them, the thing that the Iconics, I think, really hamstrung them is that if they had showed up about 10 years ago in WWE, they would have fit perfectly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's like the teaming of them worked because Billy Kay being just over the top, either goofy or screechy, and Royce being the straight man for her to play off of. Like, those two were so in sync with that it really worked, and then you split them up and you kill that.
If you could have had them against the Bellas when they were big, that would have been about the time for them.
Yeah, they would have been fantastic then. But we're more like, the reason we're talking about CMAEW is because Royce is married to Sean Spears, so if they're going to show up somewhere, that's where the smart money would be. I'm going to move us to some other people on the list, and some of these we're going to blow through real quick. In the same vein of, hey, you were in something that's over, then we broke it up, and now we don't do anything with you, and you're gone. Poor Tucker from Heavy Machinery.
I just don't see. As a worker, he was fine, but he doesn't have enough to survive in a single without a charismatic tag partner. Like, I'm sorry, there's someone else on the list that's very much in the same boat as him, and we should do him next. But yeah,
are you referring to
Wes?
Finish your thought.
Wes is the other one. He's very much in the Wes like Blakely role to me. He's good in the ring. He's not good enough as a singles, like in the ring though. He doesn't have enough charisma. He's not a particularly good talker. He needs to be paired with like an up and comer that has those qualities. Like, Tucker would be a good, like right now for like Chad Gable, he would be a good like second.
Yeah. He's good to play Robert Gibson for somebody like that.
Or
not saying anything about Robert Gibson, but to be in kind of that backup role to the lead guy.
Or like a good guy to put with like Dolph Ziggler and Bobby and Robert Roode, just for them to like berate him and be mean to him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another good position player, but WWE doesn't use position players for anything. So
can I add? I would actually say, Chad, this is kind of more to your point, where it's like they bring up Heavy Machinery, they get them over, and Otis in particular gets way over.
Yeah.
And then they break them up for no good reason, and then they don't actually do anything with Tucker.
No.
And then they somehow turn Otis, who, I mean, you're not going to necessarily have Otis. He's not necessarily going to be your breakaway, massive superstar, but the guy was over, and he has a charisma about him. Like, you could have actually pushed him.
The guy was amazingly over.
Yeah,
He could have been an
Okay.
IC champion.
I'm gonna
you could
go
have had him
on
flirt
him.
with the upper mid card. You could have had him.
Yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily put a world title on him, but he could have challenged for it on TV. He could have.
I
he
could have-
Yeah, he could have absolutely done that.
Could have
I-
maybe been like
absolutely.
an off-brand pay-per-view challenger in like a
Yes.
4-way.
Yes.
I could have totally, and here's the thing. I could have absolutely seen Otis, even if it was like just a short or a transitional run at the top of the card, because he's different from everybody else there, and especially at the end of the Mandy Rose plotline, he was so over. He was so massively over. They could have done that. They absolutely could have done that. But no, we can't do that because he doesn't look like a star. Neither did Mick Foley. How did that work? What the hell? Go for it. You're already at record lows in terms of viewership. Take a chance. Try it. See what happens. The worst that can happen is he wins it one night and you have him lose it the next night on Raw. And, okay, there you go. We tried. This really isn't coming together. Whoop-de-doo, okay? Yeah, go. What the hell? Go for it. But
they have
no.
they have this weird thing though where I don't know. I've noticed this developing with them where it's like an all or nothing thing where it's like either you're going to be like a top of the card guy or like they're going to do nothing with you.
Yeah. Look,
And I don't get that. And I actually don't understand why they had him lose the briefcase to Miz because no one wanted that. Like literally no one wanted that.
it was just to get it off of him. It was just to get it off of Otis.
But why not just, what I never understood about that though is why did you not just have him cash in and lose?
I don't know. Why not have him cash in and do something with it? Yeah, I mean,
but there's no, at least you elevate, like, but like, what if he cashed in and he lost, but you put him in a competitive match with Drew McIntyre? Like, you can still elevate someone.
yeah.
Like,
Just do something
like
with
remember like some of those Darby Allin title challenges that he lost, but he was competitive.
it. Yes.
Mhm.
Where he almost put away Cody but didn't, and that elevated him. Here's what I was going to say about Otis. Otis's appeal comes from, and I'm not putting him on the same level as Dusty, but you would see Dusty Rhodes out there, and you'd be like, Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, son of a plumber. And you'd look at him and you'd be like, wow, if he can do all that and be the heavyweight champion, then maybe there's hope for me. It's the same, you have Otis go out there and do stuff, and it's not like Otis is out of shape or anything. The dude's massively strong, but get him out there. Let him do stuff. Have him be the guy that's challenging at the top of the card it's not that you like him because he's so cool. It's that you like him because you identify with him. Or you're like, I could be buddies with him. And you cheer for him for that reason. And then what happened? Why? I don't know why you had to break up him and Tucker. Otis and Tucker being, buddies, even if Otis is doing single stuff. What's wrong with that? I don't know. But yet they got broken up, and then Tucker had I was reading, I think he had maybe 4 matches since he broke up with Otis, and one of them was on Raw the next night. The last one he had was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. They didn't do squat with him. And then they were like, oh, I guess we're going to have to fire you. It's like, yeah, you killed his gimmick, did nothing with him, and now you're going to fire him. You all are just top notch. God almighty.
Who's next? Oh yeah, we're doing West next. So what are they
Didn't-
calling it? What is
Wesley-
this?
Completely forgettable.
Yeah. So I remember him most actually from when he and Murphy were a tag team with Alexa Bliss in NXT. I think that's when he was at his best. But
Yes.
he
That was
was
the highlight
obviously
of his
the
career.
third wheel there.
Yeah. Well, and then I guess a little while later they tried to do something with him and some other dude and
Steve
Jackson
Cutler, I
Riker.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, as the Forgotten Sons, and it's
Sons
just
of Anarchy gimmick.
I think were they supposed to be like
Forbidden Sons, I think, as their name was.
no, they were Forgotten Sons.
Forgotten Sons. Yeah, sorry.
Was it the gimmick that they were supposed to be like ex-military or something like that? I don't know. All I know is like
It was boring.
It was boring, but in true like WWE fashion, that they brought them up to the main roster, and then they basically disbanded the group because Jackson Riker made a bunch of like really questionable comments that seemed like kind of like far rightish, and since that happened, he's still employed and kind of getting a push in the sense that he's on TV every week with Elias, and the other two guys got fired.
But I mean, let's be honest here though. Taking Riker's comments out of there, if you had to pick one of the three to push and keep, I think we would all take Jason Riker over them any day of the week, and because
in terms of actual talent, he's better than them, even though I'm not.
Because I think. Like, let's just remove that because we let a lot of questionable stuff slide on this show as far as judging talent. But he has a good look, one, in his favor. He actually has some in-ring talent, and he does have like some modicum of charisma. So like I could see keeping him over Wesley.
Yeah. But Wesley getting fired because someone else torpedoed the gimmick is BS.
Well, no, he was just released. He wasn't. I mean, just let out his contract. But I mean, what are you gonna do with him though? Like he's really. I mean, I don't mean this as mean as I'm gonna say, but he's like really a nothing. He's just kind of a blank slate. Like even when they were doing like the Wes and Murphy stuff, like he was
forgettable.
It was all about Alexa Bliss and Murphy, and then that other guy's there.
He's a guy who probably, if he can get a contract with them, should maybe like go to someplace like Ring of Honor, and maybe they figure out something to do with him.
I would say he doesn't have enough personality for NWA. Impact's a bad fit. ROH probably would be it.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
My memory of TNA actually blurs a bit. Was Gunner part of Aces and Eights, or am I confusing him with other people?
Yeah, I think he was, because he was there with Ezekiel as a tag team, I think.
I forget who all was in Aces and Eights. I know at one point like Bischoff's kid was part of it.
I mean, Gunner was there for like 6 years, so I mean
that whole, honestly, that period is like a blur. I didn't really follow it that often.
No, I didn't either.
I wasn't paying any attention to them in that time.
Yeah.
I would briefly pay attention. I briefly paid attention when they put the title on James Storm, and then his feud with Bobby Roode, and then I just kind of trailed off again. I didn't really start following Impact until they were doing like the final deletion stuff, and then once Anthem took over. And then it started getting some buzzes when I started paying attention, like when they were bringing in like Eddie Edwards and like Sammy Callahan, and then they kind of were, hey, hey, did some big promotion misuse you? Come here and like rehab your image.
I've been watching since they've kind of slightly been paired with AEW. I've actually started watching it more consistently, and I wouldn't call a lot of it as good, even though some of the in-ring is pretty good. But I do think in the last, I don't know how many years, at least since like Final Deletion, they are quietly an actual like compelling show to watch. It's not
tightly booked, like everything.
Yes, it's not the best you're gonna watch, but it's not. I don't like. If I watch an episode, I don't feel like I wasted my time, which is actually. I try to not make this like just a WWE hate fest, but most WWE programs, it's like I wasted time. This is so stupid. I don't feel that with Impact. Like Impact, even if it's something a segment I don't care about, it's like inoffensive, and you are correct that it's largely tightly booked. Most of the storylines make sense. Certainly when you have people challenging for titles, or you have the main event like world title programs, they at least make logical sense. Like the most recently, and this is like a tangent now, but most recently when you had Rich Swann and Moose fighting for the world title, it made perfectly logical sense, and they had a good match at the pay-per-view for it.
Moose is a great example of how a simple gimmick can be catchy and get over.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love it live, like the whole Moose thing, and like where he kind of does like the fist bump and like the whole crowd chants Moose as he does it. Like it's a really great gimmick, and you'll find yourself randomly doing that in your head sometimes. And I'm glad like Impact kept that.
Other people that are on this list, Mickey James got released.
I'm surprised she still had a job. Like she's just,
I kind of did too.
Old. I don't know what she's gonna do. Like she hasn't really been good for a while.
I think she's perfectly fine. I think she's like 41, 42, which is not that old, but I mean, in WWE land, like she might as well be a grandma. But
I think
go ahead.
Power, I think is where she'll go.
The obvious answer is that she should come to the NWA because I mean her husband's there.
Yeah,
but they also could really use like female talent in the NWA because like they don't really have a lot.
No, they have less now.
Yes, they have less now. You mentioned Allison Kay not that long ago. She used to be with NWA, but her contract lapsed. Like I actually, she's made like one appearance I think on AEW Dark, or maybe it was actually one of the Dark matches, preview matches for not Rebellion, but I think the previous AEW pay-per-view. But I'm actually a little surprised that AEW hasn't tried to sign her. Like I actually feel she'd be a really positive talent for them.
Yeah, I think though she's in a sweet spot. I think though where if she waits, she might get a little more money because I think out of the landscape of female talent, she's probably at the top, especially that power run where she showed she had some like in-ring chops, especially that Thunder Rosa match. Like I think that really upped her value. So
yeah,
I think her playing the waiting game a little bit and seeing if people like put a little more money on there for her is probably smart.
The next one that's on my list here, Mojo Rawley. I was surprised he was still employed there.
Complete waste of air as far as wrestling goes. I can't believe he lasted as long as he did and showed no improvement.
There are people like Meltzer who actually is like, oh no, he's actually good. Like, and Meltzer when he was released last week was like, oh maybe he can go to, I don't know if he said Ring of Honor, but he definitely said like, oh maybe he can go to like Ring of Honor. Let's say Ring of Honor. Let's say Ring of Honor or New Japan Wrestling, and he can really like show everyone. And it's like, what the fuck are you seeing in this dude? Like this dude was in the WWE for years and years and years. He was there probably for like 10 years or close to it. I never saw him do anything of anything that I actually would credit as like, that was interesting or that was good. Like he was just like, it's terrible. Like you're like, how could he last this long? It's like, I think he lasted because in real life, because of his pro football background, he had a relationship with Gronk. And then remember last year? A couple years ago, when Gronk actually had signed with the WWE, I think that was their opportunity to actually push them. But then Gronk left to go actually play football again. Now he has another championship ring. And that kind of left Raleigh out in the cold, and now he's released. But I don't see. He's a guy who I could see popping up in like TNA, but I'm not.
I think he'd be more of
a
power guy, but
this
is what I think happened. I think Vince was going over the books of the accountant, and he's like, "What's this money right here, sir? That's Mojo Rawley's contract. We still pay him? Yes, sir. Fire him." I can see Vince like legitimately being like, "Wait, we still have Mojo? Like I thought we fired him years ago." No, sir. Like.
He didn't answer the phone when we call him.
Yeah.
There's also the story that apparently Mojo as a person is like a really stand-up guy and did a lot of stuff to help folks out. Whether it was I don't know, doing appearances or just like pitching in to help him with stuff. So he probably earned a lot of goodwill just by, if these stories are true, just by being a stand-up dude.
Yeah, that's what kept Bobby Eaton in WCW for years after his usefulness had expired.
But even with all of that said, you know, I mean, that stuff didn't come out until he got released. I guess why would it, to be fair? But, you know, yeah, it's kind of surprising that he still had a job there. So, you know, no hate to him or anything, but not really a shocker. Chelsea Green got fired.
Yeah, who cares? Next. She can do a character okay, but she is legitimately terrible in the ring. I expect her to be in AEW because I think she's married to someone there, and she's
engaged to Matt Cardona.
Yeah, and she's friends with Britt, so.
Well, she previously was on Impact. I actually could see her returning to Impact.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where Cardona is right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is true.
The one you're thinking of is actually Peyton Royce, which is actually why I'm concerned that you could see Peyton and or Billy Kay in AEW, even though I don't feel like that's a good fit for them. It's because Peyton is actually married to Sean Spears, so
yeah.
She could pop up there.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I hate to say that because it's like I don't begrudge Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, but I actually feel that they would be much better off like an Impact. Cause I actually feel like they would probably get showcased better, and I'd rather they be there where you have really good workers who can maybe try and walk them through matches versus taking up valuable airtime in AEW when you have other women who they're younger and more inexperienced, but I actually feel like they should be given more of a focus. You have people like Layla Hirsch, who I think has a lot of promise, or someone like Red Velvet. I think you could make stars out of them, and I don't want to see like their airtime cut because you're having a Billy Kay Peyton Royce segment.
Well, who knows? Maybe they'll go there and a spark will fly and something will set off. Who knows?
Well, I mean,
but it wasn't working in the E.
Yeah. It's a good point that like Ty Conti was in the WWE system for like a few years, and then she came to AEW, got signed by them, and within a year, like maybe less, like
6 months, I'd think. Like 6 months.
Yeah, she has gotten so good. Like she's not the top tier, but she's clearly improved like dramatically, and she
went from being someone I saw nothing in to being like, oh, okay, like.
Oh, I want to see her matches. Like she's showing fire. She's showing it's like dramatic improvement. You can actually see it week to week. Because
I think if you go back to, she was in that Mae Young Classic we did a couple episodes of, and I think we were all kind of like, like I don't know if this Ty Conti.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, this is another segue, or not segue, like a sidebar, but you know who's actually, I would actually say has improved a ton is Britt Baker. Like she,
oh yeah.
I feel her character work I feel is like tremendous, but I actually feel like her in-ring talent has actually been improving a lot too. I haven't seen the match she did with Thunder Rosa.
You're in for a treat.
I want to.
I'm perpetually like 6 weeks behind on AEW.
You should be getting close to it then, shouldn't you?
Probably, because I think that match happened like 3-4 weeks ago. So another week or two, I probably will hit it. But I think she's improved a ton.
Yeah. So, the last release that's on the list here is someone who's actually been smart and preparing for this to happen. Bo Dallas has kind of been preparing for life after WWE. You know, he's been getting into real estate. He and Liv Morgan bought a farm together. They lived there together. You know, she's still employed as of this recording, but you know what? The guy knew that he read the writing on the wall and said, you know what, I'm gonna make plans for another walk of life, and you know, good for him. You know, the fact that he was able to do that.
I have very conflicting emotions about him as a worker and a talent. he's always missed some it factor to me. Like, I thought he was decent as the NXT champion. Like, I liked the Bo Lever thing.
Yes.
And I thought the B Squad was hilarious just because they were such idiots.
Well, yeah, but that's what made it work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so like he's done some stuff I've liked, but like there's always something he's lacked for me, and I don't know what it is.
I agree. He's a curiosity because I don't know what he's been doing. I mean, it's been the pandemic, so there hasn't been house shows. I think I read a statistic where his last televised WWE match was like in 2019.
It was. I read the same thing.
And again, they would have shut down actual like house shows by March of 2020. Yep. So I don't think he's actually been wrestling at all for like over a year. But he allegedly is going to get out of the wrestling business. But he's a curiosity in that I agree. Like I think there's always something that's been missing, but I actually do think he has enough talent that I would be curious to see him pop up in some place like Power or Impact, because I feel like they could use him potentially and it might work. I mean, they look at a guy like Aaron Stevens, who is basically all over NWA Power, and he's actually been good. I mean, he's been entertaining. So I don't know. I don't know if they could do something similar with Bo Dallas. Maybe.
I think it's Aaron Stevens got a pretty raw deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know the weird thing is though is Aaron Stevens had a weird arc post WWE because when he first got out, he kind of fell on his face and proved that he kind of wasn't as good as he was, and then it took him getting an NWA to kind of finally find something to show that he actually has a lot of merit as a talent. But he had about that first bit, like especially his like TNA run, like wasn't good.
Well, it's you get cut out from all the tools you had, and now you're trying to reinvent yourself and find your feet. I can understand why that would happen. You go somewhere new and you don't have any of the tools to use you used to have, and you're just like, oh God, now I've got to figure out something else. And
I think guys try too hard sometimes too when they're first getting out of the E, and then that like makes it worse.
Oh, probably. So that's the releases.
Well, not all of the releases because we have an AEW release.
Yes, that's true.
And
that's true.
I'm pretty sure Ivelisse has a special honor of being the only person, other than Jimmy Havoc, for being fired from AEW.
Yeah, not released, straight up fired.
Yes, and like let's just say the entire world was not shocked.
It's surprising that she even lasted as long as she did, because this is months ago, but there was that match she had with Thunder Rosa where it's clear she just stopped cooperating.
Yep.
And after that, it's like that probably did do her in. And
she's been on Twitter. Actually, it's funny. She was on Twitter yesterday or today. Like she's like trying to blame it on Thunder Rosa.
Yeah, she blamed that match being bad on Thunder Rosa. She's like, oh, she quit working with me. I don't know why she can't be a professional and we can just do this. And it's like, no. Whoa. Hang on just a second.
Look, it says a lot about one's reputation and the perceptions people have of her. Yeah. That when she got fired in the last few days, her initial tweet was something that's like, wow, I can't believe someone got fired for what, I forget exactly the way she phrased it, but it was like for bringing up like abuse. And we're at a time now where some sort of allegation of bad behavior on part of a wrestling company would get a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And no one bit at that. People were just like, yeah whatever. We know who you are, Ivelisse.
No
one bought it. No one was like, oh, please tell us more. Like, what abuse were you fired for trying to talk about? Everyone was just like, shut the fuck up. Like, we know you're lying.
And you could just hear the shuffling of money is people were handing over their lost bet money as soon as
Oh,
that fire tweet hit because everyone's
Yeah.
like, "Ha! I knew it'd be less than a year."
yeah. They had the pool going.
Yeah, but no, but like, yeah, it does say something about her reputation that she made accusations that everyone's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I feel kind of bad, even though I'm sure like they will find something else for her and she'll be fine. But I feel bad for Diamante because they had her and Ivelisse as a tag team.
Diamante was like her perfect. I'm pretty sure Diamante just only had a job to be Ivalice's personal like babysitter.
Well, Diamante's not a bad worker. I actually
No.
feel like they could do something with her, and they probably will. Like I think she's going to still be part of.
Yeah, I
AEW.
think she's justified staying, but I think initially she came in as like
Probably.
Ivalice's like babysitter.
Yes, they probably like, look, it's going to be a big assignment for you, but please, please be her
Can you
handler.
please sit on her?
Yes.
Can you do something? And then we promise we will make it worth your while. And she goes, okay, well,
Like-
we'll do. And
Like, look, we just need you to keep an expense account. Every time you have to like slap the shit out of her for misbehaving, we'll give you $1,000. Like, just
there's so many things it could be, but if I could just see it being like a look, if you will handle her until she blows it up too badly for us to keep her around, we swear we will make it worth your trouble.
you're probably
they-
you're probably having lunch with Tony Khan. He like looks at his cell phone. He sees Diamante. He's like, oh god damn it! Like she did what? Like, well, here,
Yeah.
how about $5,000?
he just looks at her and he said, I keep my promises. I keep my promises. And she goes, I know you do. I know you do. But God, can we? And he's like, I know, but this one isn't big enough. Look, here's the thing. Whenever she came in, everyone's like, I don't think so. And then, like, there was friction between her and Rosa, and everybody's like, yeah, we
one of
don't know
you
what's
star.
happening, but we're agreeing with Rosa.
Yeah.
And then the first, weren't there 2 blow-ups? Is that right? Like 2 things happened.
I'm
I
sure
don't
there
know.
were. I'm sure there were dozens of blow-ups.
Well, I'm going off of, I've been hitting head too many times. I'm going off of shoddy memory here, but I think that there was an instance of some kind of trouble, and they're like, all right, we're going to smooth this over. And they did, and Ivelisse like was making noise about it or something. And then that kind of went away, and then this happened, and then it's like everybody's like, we were waiting for this shoe to drop. We knew this was coming.
I don't know. Her history is, it's actually a shame because she's a fairly talented performer and she just can't behave herself.
Might be like some other people we've talked about on this show.
Tessa Blanchard.
Low key.
Yeah, but but here's the thing though. It's a testament.
Quit! Stop! You're never going to be around
no.
him.
It is a testament though to Loki's talent that people know he's going to burn them in 6 months and they'll still use him because he's going to give you a good 6 months. You just got to know he's going to burn you at the end. But it also seems like the difference though between Loki and Ivelisse though is Ivelisse just seems impossible and like a malcontent and she's never happy and no one likes her. With Loki, other than like instance when he's younger, I'm talking about currently, Loki seems like he's just going to bail on you when you start wanting him to job, but it doesn't seem like he causes you. He doesn't seem to cause like problems.
Unless he does.
And his is more like a creative thing, not like a person, like an interpersonal thing anymore.
I don't know. I'm not. Anyway, there are plenty of people who have plenty of talent, but they are. If we were talking about like an office workplace setting, I'd call them an Eeyore. There's someone who just puts out so much negativity that they're trying to spread it around because misery loves company. And, if I'm going to be unhappy, so's everybody around me. And you don't need that kind of crap in your workplace. It's just going to bring everybody else down. And in a business where you're trusting the other person with your well-being, you absolutely don't want someone like that around. So, I hate to be the guy that, I hate it whenever it feels like I got to say something like this, but it seems like everybody knew this was coming. It was just a matter of when.
Oh, totally. Like I don't think I think a lot of people were surprised she lasted as long as she did.
Yeah, blew it up right in her own face.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to something that kind of comes out of the recent Mania and stuff following. And that's the importance of having clean finishes. Now, the thing is, you've got, just on a base level, you've got to have a clean finish, if for no other reason than in history, there was a series of, they came to be called Dusty finishes, where Dusty Rhodes kept booking finishes that were like, oh, this happens, and then we reverse it.
That, honestly, that was a well-worn trope before
Right,
Dusty.
but it got the name because Dusty just kept doing it.
Other promotions abused it. I mean, calling it a Dusty finish is fine, but like, I think he just gets that rap because it happened a lot when a lot of like the current kind of people that drive the narrative were.
Well, but for the sake of kind of setting the stage on this, as an example, Dusty would do this, and it looks like this guy would win the title. And it's like, oh, but as it turns out, because of some rule that nobody knew was in effect, then he doesn't win the title, and oh, that's too bad, isn't it? And then so instead of it being like, well, I want to see him, get that, everybody's just got the wind out of their sails.
I mean, that's what the whole over the top rope rule existed for, was to Dusty finish everything in the 70s.
And Luger beating Yokozuna by countout was not a clean finish, and what did it do? It just hurt. It just killed Luger.
Well, it's because he celebrated like he won something.
Right, but it wasn't a clean finish, and yet here we are.
Well, really, where I wanted to talk about this was on SmackDown last week. Cesaro beat.
I was just trying to set the stage. Okay. That's all.
Beat Jey Uso by DQ, which I think is really a problem because I think non-clean finishes have a place, but as we've seen kind of across the board, like as we entered the 90s, like if you go back to like 80s Japan, like double DQs and double countouts are everywhere, and they kind of figured out, hey, that kind of pisses people off, we should stop doing that. And I think a lot of American promotions have kind of gone that way. Like if you look at AEW has maybe a DQ every 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Like it's exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
Which I would actually argue like they should probably do a little more, because the problem with AEW is that I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're not trying to do screwy finishes. So they're trying to make they're trying to make the wins and losses matter, because they have of course a ranking system. But I feel like it gets a little complicated because they want to try and push people, so they have them interact like every week, and I don't know that it always works.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
If they had more DQ finishes, it would probably they want to keep the wins and losses like strong. They want to push that, which I appreciate that. I think promotions generally should try and do that. That said, because they do that, like they can't just have guys like face each other, and maybe it's like a DQ finish. But so they do this thing where it's like the Darby Team Taz thing was kind of like a bad, like a egregious example. It's like literally every week you had them out doing stuff, and it's like maybe you don't do that, because as much as I love Sting, like Sting is no longer like important. Kind of like he's not like a special attraction now, because you had him every week doing stuff with Team Taz, and it's like maybe don't do that. Maybe only every other episode you have you guys do stuff. I don't know. It's a little complicated, but I'm digressing.
But I think when you get over to WWE, like so you had this Cesaro versus Jey Uso match. And Cesaro won by DQ because Seth Rollins like ran in because they had just had a match at Mania. But it's like, you know, that's a really egregious example of a non-clean finish, because that'd be like having an upper mid-card guy only beat Brad Armstrong by DQ in like the early 90s.
The WWE use DQ finishes like a lot.
And sometimes they do like the same finish back to back.
Yes.
On stuff.
I'm sure if I actually paid attention, they probably would have a DQ finish at least once every week.
They do.
Probably.
They
Maybe
usually
more.
one or two every week.
But yes, like I was thinking about this, and I'm going to be extraordinarily generous to Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. It's like think of old school NWA or early 90s WCW, and you have a face who you're building up to challenge Ric Flair. I'm going to say let's compare Roman to Ric Flair. Like that's exceedingly generous, but like Jey Uso in this scenario would be like Arn Anderson.
I wouldn't even say that's fair because.
I mean, I'm being extraordinarily generous, but the face would have a nice competitive match with Arn Anderson because I mean Arn Anderson's built up, but he'd beat Arn Anderson, or maybe he's like a Bobby Eaton or somebody like like Larry Zbyszko and the Dangerous Alliance. Somebody, it's like you would have them beat them. You wouldn't be like, oh, it has to be DQ finish because we have to keep Jey Uso strong. It's like, no, Jey Uso exists to be to eat pins for Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
That's his function.
It would not have hurt. It would not have even changed anything for Seth to run in after Cesaro beats Jey. Like,
that's what I don't get about
literally changed nothing. And why they're continuing this? God, I know this is going to be a tangent from our clean finishes section. I'm sorry. But why they're continuing a storyline post-Mania, I don't get. Mania is supposed to be the blow-off show. That's where the stuff ends, and then the day after Mania, you start building the new stuff. But no, the next show is going to be WrestleMania Backlash, which now means that WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all, the showcase of the Immortals, the Grand Poobah, whatever in the hell, blah, 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 is now just another show because we can't end stuff there.
Every show is just another show, Shad.
Yeah, they're content producers now.
Yes,
they're just filling air.
That is their function. Like nothing is actually special. Maybe once they actually have, and I'm not considering this WrestleMania a true test of like fans back in the stadiums, but once they actually do live shows again on a consistent basis, maybe it will mean more. I doubt it, but yeah, no show is important. Like we're still operating under the assumption that WrestleMania is important. It's not that important anymore. Like everything is just another show because they're there to produce content for the USA Network or for Peacock. Like that's where their money is.
I was going to be happy to see Cesaro finally like going up the card and stuff, but they're doing this kind of crap makes me not want to watch their show more. I
think too the struggle is so like it's bad storytelling. So he beat Seth. Seth ran in, but Seth didn't cost him the match. So theoretically, he's still getting a title shot. But why is he still having issues with Seth when he beat him cleanly? Like he should be moving on to the next program, and you have this like muddled.
He beat
mess.
Seth definitively. He did the UFO. He did the swing. He did the neutralizer. 1, 2, 3, done. In terms of Seth Rollins, Cesaro has his number and put him in the ground. Next. But no, we can't have that.
But to go back to Matt's point, though, they've been in this mode for a while. Like their 3-month feud formula they've been doing at least since like 2012, I think. They really got into that formula when they went to the network and pay-per-view became less important. That's really where we really got screwed by that move because they felt less obligated to give you good finishes when you're paying $10 a month instead of $60 straight up for a pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where like when their content filler thing came in is when they got this idea that feud should be 3 months and go through 3 pay-per-views. So then the first 2 matches never mean a damn thing.
Oh, you mean it's like the first 60 minutes of the Bret Shawn Iron Man match?
Yes. But like Bray, Cena's a good example of that, where like Bray won like the first match and then Cena won the next 2. Like it just none of
Bray
it
didn't
mattered.
even win the first one. Bray won.
Did he win the second one?
He won this. He lost the Mania match. Then the second match was the cage match that had the chicanery with the kid, and then he lost the third match.
Okay. Sorry, I got it wrong. Usually what happens is someone wins the first match and then loses the next 2. They don't like back and forth it very much.
Well, but they just screwed that whole feud up from the beginning. And also the damnedest thing about Bray winning that second match was the fact that Cena beat the living hell out of all 3 of the guys, and Bray only won by chicanery, which means there is no... Yeah, they had the face-heel dynamic completely backwards. So, you know, that's just beside the point.
To me, the pattern that they do is even more egregious because it's the same thing. It's like they do in fact do these like 3-month feuds, but they'll have, it's not just like, hey, they'll have a match at this pay-per-view and then a second match at the pay-per-view, and the blow-off for month 3, it'll be a gimmick match, which they do. But in between, it's like, okay, well, they have to face each other or have a segment with each other every week on Raw or SmackDown. And it's like,
don't.
By the end of it, I'm so fucking over this because you've actually had these 2 people or more, if it's a tag team, however many people. It's like you've had them interact with each other or face each other like 50 times in a 3-month period. I'm over it. Like,
remember that Seth Rollins Dolph Ziggler thing that would just not end? And remember they did that 30-minute Iron Man match where like they had a longer match earlier in the feud?
Yeah. The Iron Man match was the shorter one, and it still didn't make a difference.
Well, the fact that the reason they do so many damn gimmick matches is because they've had them face each other so many damn times that you have to have that. It's like, well, we have to do something special because you've already seen this like 50 times by now. Well, and it's like, maybe why don't I understand you have weekly episodic TV. It can't be like the 1980s where you would maybe see on primetime wrestling like some dudes cut a promo and then, you know, that was it. Like it's really like stretched out, but still, it's like you don't need people interacting every show.
Yeah, and where I really bothers me is title programs, because I hate when they do that with title programs, because it's like, well, the this really came up in the Orton McIntyre thing. Is like, if the champion beats you as the challenger in like, let's say boxing or MMA, you go back down the ranking list and you have to earn your way up. So like in wrestling, what they used to do, like in Memphis and stuff, like if you lost that title match and you come back and be like, hey, I want another title match, like, well, I beat you. Well, how about this? Like, you put the title on the line and I'll put my hair on the line, or hey, here is $10,000, or hey, I will retire if I don't beat you. Like, if the challenger comes back, they need to put some sort of stake in it to wet the champion's whistle a little bit.
Yeah, you've got to entice the champion, because the champion doesn't have anything to prove.
Exactly.
Anymore.
Or the champion needs to do like, or an angle I've done fantasy booking that kind of did it with Flair in like mid-90s WCW, but they don't really have that kind of same setup. But like, you know, the champion beats you, is like, I'm not defending anymore. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna go win the U.S. title, and then you have to face me because I'm the #1 contender.
Right. It would be okay if the builds weren't all the damn time. If every build was not always same thing. If they were spaced out. If you only, like, if you got segments for your stuff every other week to build your feud, what would that do? One, it's more special when it happens because we didn't literally just see it. And number two, more people get more opportunities to do more stuff and earn their pay instead of sitting and catering all night, not doing anything. Just, and you don't have to blow it off at the next pay-per-view. Quit making them so damn long. Let the people who are going to be on the card have some more time. And then, okay, you're doing this at Backlash, which means, I don't know, I'm going to make it up. No Way Out is next. That means you're doing this at No Way Out. And we can just have a little more time. Everything does not have to be just a red hot straight shot build right to the next thing. And that also means you don't have to 50-50 book everything. You can have clean finishes where somebody goes over clearly and then advances and then works their way up the card. Cesaro beats Rollins clean. He's moving on to Reigns. You don't have to get anybody else involved. It's just like, no, he's got to get Reigns to have the match with him now. Okay, we can do something with that. Just for God's sake, slow everything down. Don't.
Well, they need to get rid of pay-per-views. Honestly, they've needed to get rid of pay-per-views for a long time. Like, I think they don't like, sometimes they only have in recent years they've had as short as 2 weeks to turn around between pay-per-views, and it's just
There's no need for that.
Yeah, I think AEW could do with a couple more, but I think one every 2 or 3 months would work better, because then that lets you take your time and story tell properly. I really think 12 pay-per-views was a novelty at first because people were hungry for wrestling content, but I feel like it really just hampers long-term ability because you can't properly build things. And you burn your challengers too quick.
Yeah. Or you stretch it out so long that nobody cares anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we want to move on to our final segment?
Yes. Let us. And the genesis for this discussion came out of, frankly, it came from Edge. In Edge's career, he's had 3 big finishes, I think.
He had the downward spiral when he started, which was it
was a flatliner, basically.
Yeah. Then he had the Impact DDT.
They call it the Edgecution. Okay. Kind of roll my eyes at that name.
Was that one where he did that kind of, where he'd pull them, he'd grab their head and kind of do a sit out reverse buster thing? Was that ever a finisher, or was that just
that wasn't a finish? That was a signature spot. I don't know if there was a name for it, but it was kind of a inverted face. But Goldust used the same move, but it had a name for Goldust. I think it was called the Oscar or something. But yeah, no, that wasn't a finish. That was just a spot. And then he had his spear, which I have never liked the spear on Edge. I like Edge, but I have never liked the spear on Edge. I liked the jumping DDT on him. Hell, I used it for a long time, but not the spear.
Matt, what did you say they call it?
Edges. I've heard it called the running hug of doom or something like that.
Yes,
something like that.
Yeah,
because it didn't have a lot of impact to it.
Well,
No.
It's okay. So Edge's spear I'm gonna talk dynamics of it, I guess. Edge's spear is he comes running at you and he jumps, and when he hits you, he does not go through you. He hits you, one arm goes around you. Sometimes he kind of quarter rotates, so he lands on his knees next to you, which is great for transferring into a pin, except it doesn't look like he's spearing you. It looks like he's doing
a
a
grenade in a movie.
He's doing a hunched forward shoulder block to the abdomen. Okay. And like I said, there's no follow through. He hits you and everything stops. That's in my book, that's not a spear, and that's why I don't like Roman's either. Is because Roman, I haven't watched recently because I just haven't watched WWE recently. But that was the biggest thing. Is his spear is when he would make contact with you, he'd just stop.
I thought his was better when he was in the Shield. It's gotten progressively crappier as time has gone on.
Yeah, well, yeah. In his singles run, his spear was. He would at least like leap and extend for it. Edge's spear still had like his knees tucked up under him in a lot of cases. So the body doesn't elongate for this big dynamic look. Like Roman at least jumps out, and whenever he does it, like he stretches his body out so it looks like, oddly enough, it looks like an actual spear. Long, right?
And
long.
Roman's at least like built, and he's like a big dude, so he has like a believable body for it. I think that's also where Edge's hurts, is because Edge isn't like a super physically imposing guy like in a wrestling setting. So I think you got to give it a little more juice versus some of the other people that use it. Because like obviously I think when we talk about this, Goldberg is obviously far and away the best.
Absolutely. And not only is Goldberg the best, he was the first one to be doing it. It's odd, the first one to do stuff, being the best, that's usually limited to it's limited to Goldberg and Arn Anderson's Spine Buster. But, Goldberg, first of all, Goldberg hits you with a spear. He leaps into it. His body is up off the ground. So it's this big dynamic thing. And he doesn't just, Goldberg is big, right? Like, he's a broad-chested dude. Big traps, all this sort of stuff. So it looks like it gets hurt to hit by it. And he didn't just hit you and stop. He flipping mowed you over because he was doing a full bore football tackle. Like, it had the double leg takedown, like whiplash aspect to it. I remember the first one he did to Scotty Riggs. I was just like, jeez, because it looked like it killed him.
I did like that the segment. Where he did it to Bret Hart, and Bret Hart had the chest plate, so Goldberg just got KO'd because he had that piece of steel under his shirt.
Yeah, well, that was the other nice thing about Goldberg doing the spear, was that he would hit so hard and commit to it that if something went wrong, it was even more believable. Bret wearing the plate, Goldberg hitting the post in the Goldberg DDP Halloween Havoc match, his spear was, I'm gonna run you over. Whereas Roman's and Edge's are like, when I hit you, I stop and we both fall down. For me, the number 2 spear is actually going to be Rhino. And I know it's the gore. But Rhino being this stocky, thick dude who just leaps and mows you down with it. Oh, it's a great visual, and I can totally buy. He's like a wrecking ball swinging through the air hitting you.
I was never that big into Rhino, but Rhino did get the move really over, and he was, for a period of time, he was very believable in it because he's a weirdly shaped guy. He's very, I almost feel he's more wide than he is tall.
He's got most of his bulk is in his ass and his hips. He is a weird looking guy, and he's got really short arms.
Yeah, he looks like a box. He's like a box. He's like a fridge with legs.
Yes,
like Larry D.
And he's not exactly a short guy, but he's also not a big guy.
He's weird because I think he's taller than he looks, but his build makes him have you ever seen?
Oh, he looks stubby.
Yeah, have you ever seen Lex Luger live?
I have not.
So Lex Luger live, you would legitimately think he's 6'7". And then you realize, when you see him next to other people, he's a tall guy, but he's not as tall as you think he is. But there's something about the way he's built that gives him the appearance of being taller than he is. Rhino kind of has that effect in the opposite way, where I also think he looks shorter because I think his weird build and how he has all that bulk and I think he has to kind of hunch a bit to not crush his balls between his thighs. So I think that might make him look a little shorter, but he's very stumpy in appearance. And I think that gives off the appearance of him being short. But I mean, we've seen him in WWE, and he's got to be at least 6 feet, I think.
I think he's just shy of that, but he's like a wrecking ball, just swinging through the air, hitting you.
I actually think TNA used him the best out of all the companies. Though I did
Rhino?
like his run with Heath Slater.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I would actually probably agree with you about TNA using him the best.
I just like the segment where they're at like Heath Slater's like trailer and they're doing something and he's like sitting there in the corner with like the spray on cheese and crackers and he's like drawing like frowny faces on the crackers.
Yeah, I liked Rhinos. Here's another odd one, but and this wasn't in a period where I was paying a lot of attention, but there was a woman in WWE named Caitlyn.
Oh yeah.
And she worked her most of the notable work she had was with AJ Lee. She would do this spear and AJ Lee like would just die on impact with it. But you know, we got to take context into effect. You know, these women were not as tall as some of the men that we see or that sort of stuff. But she looks like she just murdered somebody with that spear because she would run right over top of them.
I think it's a good move for Charlotte because her obvious size advantages over most of the women makes hers look believable.
Charlotte doesn't use it as a finish.
No, but she uses it as a move though, and I think hers isn't perfect, but I think she can get away with some of it because she is so much larger. Because I think people might pick it apart technically, but if you know you're a standard size like Sasha Banks and you have this 6 foot tall like 180-pound woman just run you over like that, like she doesn't have to do a lot because her bulk's gonna do most of the work for her.
Well, and it, like I said, it also helps that it's not her finish, so it doesn't get as much scrutiny. But yeah, you know, Charlotte's taller than a lot of the women, so yeah, you're right. It absolutely works.
And she's got a lot of mass to her just because she's so like, because she's like pretty much she was just an athletic trainer, right? Or was she a bodybuilder?
Charlotte Flair?
Yeah.
I feel like she was like a basketball player, maybe. Let me look this up.
I think she was professionally. I think she was a trainer before she started wrestling. But
she's
could be
built,
wrong.
Okay, so looking it up, she was a volleyball player. So I knew she did play college sports. She was a volleyball player, and it looks like she was a personal trainer.
Okay.
She's tall. She's like 5'10", which is quite tall for a woman.
And she's like, especially if you see her live, like she's quite built, like muscle wise.
No, she's well developed.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. She's
a
very
person put a lot of work into her body.
She has a very athletic frame.
Yeah. Because she's got she's wide shouldered, like she's very, I don't know if wide's the right word, but she's got like, just like, when you see like an athlete and you see like an athlete that has that mass to them, she has that. She's just dense.
This is if you want to actually look to like NXT, and she's actually like changed her physique. She's improved it a lot, but the current champion Raquel Gonzalez, like she's actually changed her look a lot because she's someone who, if you look at her, she has like a very well developed back because she clearly has been like lifting, working out a lot more. And she's kind of taller. They don't quite have the similar frame, but it's edging into like the same type of thing. But I almost feel like it makes her more believable. And maybe because she's working with like girls who are like 5'5", 5'6".
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that she's like 5'10" and well muscled, it makes a difference.
It's easy for her to look like she's ragdolling someone with little effort because
I will give Raquel Gonzalez some kudos. I think she was in the Mae Young Classic, and
and we thought she had potential, but remember she was in there with that. She was like that American Ninja Warrior lady.
Katie Catanzaro, who's still.
And we commented that we thought Gonzalez had potential, but it looked like she was like she was in there with like someone she was afraid of like hurting, so like she was doing everything like super light.
Yeah. I actually think Raquel Gonzalez has actually improved like a ton. I think she's really starting to come into her own. I actually think she has even more room for improvement, but I think she's actually really, really developed as a professional wrestler. I think she's improved a ton.
My only problem with her placement though is I feel like it really annoys me their misuse of Dakota Kai in NXT, and I feel like
I agree.
They gave everyone a glimmer of hope that they were going to finally do something with Dakota Kai, and they were just like, haha, suckers, this was just to get Raquel Gonzalez over.
Yeah, I 100% knew that was exactly what they were going to do. I saw, this is like months ago, but I think Dakota Kai did have a match with Rhea Ripley, and I think Rhea won, but it was a very competitive match, and Raquel looked like a star. And when that happened, and this was even before she formed the tag team with Dakota Kai, I was like, oh no. When that tag team got formed, in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're counting the days till they can push Raquel over Dakota, which is sad. I mean, I get pushing Raquel. I think you have some potential there to do something with her, but I do think Dakota Kai is actually quite talented, and she's got a lot of charisma. Like, you could do something with her more than what they're doing. Like, I don't know.
They just feel like ever since that Shayna Baszler thing where they made, like, she never got any comeuppance on her after looking like a total putz.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just feels like they're just out to get her for some reason.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I'm going to drag us back over to the original topic. Is there anybody else that's been a regular user of the spear that's been worth mentioning, I guess?
I feel like there's a couple of people, but I can't remember them.
I could be cheeky and say like Gilbert, but honest answer is I actually think in AEW, I think Ricky Starks has been using the spear a bit.
Has he?
It's not his finisher, but I think he has been using it as a signature move.
Given Stark's other work that I've seen, I have actually a decent amount of faith that he probably does it pretty damn well.
He does do it well, but if you're focusing on Team Taz, as much as I like Starks and as much as he does do the move well, I think he's a really talented worker. I kind of edge more into the, like what Brad was saying, like Roman Reigns. His spear looks good because, I mean, he has a pro football, or at least has a football background, but he's a really built, like, in shape dude. And Ricky Starks is very in shape, but he has more of that I'm not gonna say lanky, but he has more of that.
He's leaner.
He has almost more of like a he's a dude who, like, you know, could smoke. He probably does like CrossFit and things like that. He's like in really good shape. But if I'm looking at people from Team Taz, like I would want Powerhouse Hobbs or Brian Cage to be doing a spear if someone's gonna do that move, because they were both really big dudes, and if they did a spear, as long as it was halfway competent, they would look like they would be murdering the person who's receiving that.
Brian Cage would probably do some like stupid flip in the middle of it and ruin it, though.
Maybe. You should probably get to Powerhouse Hobbs because he's a big dude, and he would just look like a killer.
Yeah, I guess Big E does a spear sometimes too.
This is not a spear, but I'm gonna give a shout out to a dude who did a similar type of move, but Monty Brown and the Pounce.
Yes.
That's almost like a sad story, because that dude was like over.
Yeah.
And he was getting over as like Marcus Quavon or whatever he was in the WWE. Corvon. But he left wrestling. I think it's because he had, I don't know the full story. I think I had heard that he had to give like a kidney to like a family member or something like that. But
I think he also had like a gym, or he was like a fitness trainer, and he was making more money at that than wrestling too. Maybe.
But that dude's Pounce was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it because it was not a spear. Like it was a neighbor to it, but it didn't live in the same house.
Yeah.
And so and it really, really worked with the 6-sided ring.
Because he could hit you, he could blindside hit you from the side because he could get the angle on you, which made it look better.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. And
they should just give some of these moves to like dudes now. Like, if I'm thinking like Powerhouse Hobbs, like give him like the pounds. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
That dude's like pushing 300. Like that dude, if he pounds people, like he would get massively over because he would look like he'd be murdering people. Watch it. I kind of don't want them to do anymore with Darby Allin because I think that's played out. But imagine him like doing a pounce on Darby Allin, or
God, Allin fly out of the ring.
A smaller dude like
Jungle Boy.
Yeah.
Oh God.
He would fly out of the ring.
Just for quick background, says that Monty Brown took several months off in 2007 for family issues. They announced September 2007 he was released from his contract and he retired. So, good, he started a range of athletic clothing and he's a personal trainer now. So, good for him. He got to go on and have his life. But I am like on the indie scene, of guys I encountered, there's this huge dichotomy between spear users. There's on one hand, and you see him in Impact now, Larry D. At the time I had a match with him was using the spear as a finish. And we talked about this with Alex Angel in the episode we had him in. And it was he used a spear, and at the time, as you know, it was I was just filling a spot for that company. Like I went to the show because I wasn't doing anything that night to see what was up, and they asked me to fill a spot to job to Larry D. And I'm like, yeah, sure, fine. And he's like, all right, well, I finished with the spear, and in my head I'm just bracing myself for it's like, all right, this is gonna suck. No, he did a perfect spear. And if you look at Larry D, he looks like a guy who would do a great, his spear would look really good. And then there was
shooter in Impact.
What's that?
Remember that Halloween angle? He was the mystery shooter in Impact.
Was he?
Remember that's where they all dressed up, and I don't remember who it was that got shot, and Tommy Dreamer was like, "No!"
Okay. Now his gimmick is the best hand in the house, which that's an amusing thing to use, but it's the best hand in the house because he uses the knockout punch.
What are
he shoots you off.
He teams with Ace Romero in Impact. I don't remember what they call themselves. Are they Double XL or something?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe Triple XL.
Yeah.
But he shoots you off, and then whenever you come back, he does this big overhand shot that as a knockout punch, which it looks really good and it fits for him, and it's just got to be way the hell easier to use. Triple XL, yeah.
Yeah.
And good for him. But then on the other hand, in one of the other companies I worked with, there was this dude who, I swear, he had to be like 5'7" at the tallest. And he's a skinny little dude, and he used the spear as his finish. And it was like, he wanted to do that on me at one point, and I was like, dude, listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm not doing that. If you're gonna want to have a big spot or a big knockdown spot or a false finish or something, you're going to need to use something else, because that ain't going to do it. I am so much bigger than you that it's not going to. If we were playing football, nobody would expect you to be able to take me down with it.
That's like a you're going to have to fail a couple times and throw powder in my eyes, and then we can talk.
I don't want to say his name and bury the poor kid, but he did not have the grasp he thought he did on the business. And
why wouldn't he do something a little flyer?
He was not a very flyy guy.
Oh. What about DDT? Like that's believable, even if the guy's bigger.
Yeah, there were in that crop, there was a bad habit for a bunch of guys to use a DDT as a transition move. And I was using that leaping DDT, that impaler DDT as a finish at the time. And I don't care. I mean, I grab you, we go up, you come down, you land on your head. Sounds like a good finish to me.
So this is probably biased, but I feel like when you get into smaller indies, and especially like around Kentucky, where you're probably dealing with maybe potentially some people from the hills coming down and training, that if you're a smaller guy, you need to be more conscientious of your offense, because you probably have a good chance of, like, one, running into some giant fat fuck that your finish isn't going to look good on, or some giant farm hill boy that's like 6'5" and like 280 pounds of pure muscle that you're not going to look believable against unless you have like the proper finisher.
Yeah, I've always been a proponent. I know this isn't the right term for it, but I call it a finisher of the Foley standard. A finish you can do to anybody that'll look good. So, Paul White doing a choke slam, of course that makes sense. He can do that to anybody. There was nobody that he couldn't do a choke slam to. But on the other hand, and Ric Flair doing a figure four, of course he can do that to anybody. Sure, not a problem. But like if Edge tried to spear Paul White, there's no reason why you should believe that would work. The stunner was great for it. The mandible claw was great for it.
The rogue kick from Sheamus was a really good one.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena, by the virtue of being a freak of nature, made the AA a good one. The rock bottom, the stunner, those were all good ones.
All of Cesaro's big moves, because he's proven he can do that to
everyone.
He can
do that to anybody.
Yeah, because I have to say, I never liked the Great Khali, but man, that dude was willing to do almost anything, because he let Cena put him through a table with an AA. He would let Cesaro like spin him for days.
Mm-hmm.
I think he even took the neutralizer, didn't he?
I don't know if he did or not, but he damn well had to, because apparently his big chop, he just like absolutely crushed your skull with it. So if he was going to hit you with that, he damn well had to be willing to take whatever you were going to do to him.
Well, Cesaro gets mad love from Mark Henry for being like freakishly strong.
Yeah,
that is his rep. Like, he actually is a freak of nature. Like, he is just that strong.
If you see him live, he is ripped beyond. Like, we're talking like his muscles have muscles. If you see him live,
it just carries a different gravity whenever you see someone in person. Like, I saw Big Show or Paul White in person at a house show, mid-late 2000s probably. I'm sitting halfway up in the arena, right? Like, I'm not down at ringside. I'm sitting which was great. I was sitting halfway up, just above where like the hard cam would be for TV. So it was great. I had a great view of everything. Here comes Paul White walking out. You look at him, and even from that far away, the size of that guy carries. Like, you look at him and you're just like, geez, that's a big dude.
I saw Goldberg jackhammer him on a WCW house show.
I bet that was cool. But that poor little dude, if I was going to give him a finish, because the gimmick he seemed to kind of be trying to go with was the scrappy brawly type thing. And I was just looking at him, and I was like, oh, God, what would I give you? And the thing that just kept seeming to come to mind for me is he would need the setup for it, but just a good running high-speed bulldog, I think, would have been a good finish for him. You get somebody, pepper him, kick him in the gut or kick his leg out from under him, hit the ropes, come running, hit that bulldog. It's high speed. You do it real quick. There's lots of movement. I thought that would be a good, but, he wasn't interested in hearing it. So what are you going to do?
I don't know. Smack him around a bit.
I didn't need to smack him around. the last match I had with him, I squashed the living hell out of him.
I don't get that, I guess.
What?
Like why? Like even if you guys worked it well, like even a pile driver spot would be more believable than a spear.
Well, well. First of all, I wasn't letting him do it. I never let anybody do a pile driver spot.
I just meant in the general scheme of the world.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Why not do like an MMA gimmick if you're that small?
Because he did not have the background for it.
But I mean, like that's believable. Like if he gets your back, even if you're much bigger, like he could still theoretically, believably choke you out.
Yeah, a rear naked choke would work, but a lot of people on that roster had an idea that submission finishes, they didn't want to do them. They didn't want to take them.
Because people didn't want to tap.
Yeah.
You know, I've never understood that at that level. Like, why do you care?
I don't know. There's some kind of weird sense of pride, I guess.
Like, I know you did it, but it's like if I'm doing a match and I'm just doing it because I'm weekend warrioring it, and I'm gonna make, I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking slash that guy's tires. If I was making like $40 for the night and I'm just weekend worrying it, why do I care about like protecting myself, especially when it's probably the same fans that are gonna see me every month? Like it's probably not on a DVD anywhere, and I could go to a different promotion where no one's heard of me and it doesn't matter. And there are far bigger talents than me that take submission finishes. Like I just don't get that bug up the butt about.
Well, it was a pervasive attitude, and this poor guy was probably not in a place where he felt confident enough in going to another company to do something, because it's not like he was. God, I'm not gonna bury him anymore.
He wasn't.
I should.
He wasn't ambitious but see, I feel like though that's kind of sad, because what if like a change of scenery, if he had that confidence, could have like cultivated, like he could have met someone there that would have like helped him along, and maybe he could have tapped into something.
He also really wanted to be something other than what he was. He wanted to be that brawly face type when he could have been, I think, a really good Ricky Morton. You know, he takes the heat, he gets the sympathy, he makes the tag to his big buddy tag partner who comes in and just cleans house as in revenge for you beating up on his buddy like that. Like, but you know, he didn't want to do it.
Or be like the Randy Mulkey.
Something, but he didn't want to do it. So
that's always so bizarre to me, but whatever. You've always told me that I just have the wrong mentality, that I'm too.
Well, no. In wrestling, there's a certain amount of selfishness that goes into it for the, and the problem that I had was that I was probably too giving, in that I didn't do the, you're not gonna put this over on me and make me look like crap. I was like, let's do stuff that both makes us look good, and there were people who want to take advantage of that. So instead of having, if I was in an environment where more people did that, then things probably would have blown up, like gotten way bigger than they did. But
it's just, whenever you talk about like the guys that are still working or moving on to bigger promotions, are the guys you always said were giving and like did little things that always made their opponent look good. And you kind of wonder if maybe people would, you know what I mean? Like people would notice that. Like when you talk about working with Larry D or what was his name? Ronnie something or other?
Ronnie Roberts.
Who kind of, worked some bigger promotions down the road.
He's got a regular talk series on Ohio Valley Wrestling now.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
He is, since he's the Reverend Ronnie Roberts, he now does the it's the good word interview segment.
Oh, that's cool. But like, you would think that they would see like, oh, hey, that guy is really easy to work with, and he makes sure his opponents looks good, and he's open-minded.
God, Ronnie Roberts was like a dream to work with. Not only was it like, I know I've said it before, but you know, we did this sequence. I did a hip toss, a scoop slam, and a side Russian leg sweep into a pin attempt. And it, you know, I'm doing it, but it's like I'm just waving my hands in the air. He was so light to do that stuff with, and he did. You know, we did this. I'm a good deal bigger than Ronnie Roberts, and we did this spot on the outside where he went to whip me to the barricade, and I was like, okay, we're doing heat. He's going to whip me to the barricade and get over. And he starts doing, he's like, reverse me, reverse me. So I do. I reverse him and whip him into it, and the crowd's just flipping out. And I turn, and here comes his manager with the weapon in his hand. And his manager, instead of winding up and going after me, his manager, like, full bore backs, like, begs off. We had this great, it was like a dream working with him. It was seriously amazing. And I can't figure if it's because he was so good that people were going to do stuff with him anyway, or if he was so willing to make other people look good even when he was going over. I don't know. Like, but he was, God,
It sounds like
the world was full of people like that. He does. Yeah. He's someone who absolutely gets it.
So, do we want to call this a show then, guys?
Mhm.
I believe we can put a lid on this one. So everybody out there, thank you for joining us for this episode. We're glad you could be here with us. We'd love to hear from you. You think we were giving someone who got a release, not giving them enough credit, or maybe giving them too much? Want to weigh in on the Ibelis thing, on clean finishes, on spears? We would love to hear from you. Please hit us up on our social media. We do handle requests, provided we can find them, and provided that, you know, there's a modicum of reasonable in it, right? But we would love to hear from you on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on our YouTube. So this is Shad with Matt and Brad. We've been in 3 quarters. You're in the 4th, and we will see you next time.